We need Mark up front and Jeremy up front. Who else is missing? The program participants, please come and take your assigned seat.
It's Alan Holmes and John Davidow.
Ali and John. Ali is here. And John is not here yet, but he will come.
And Jerry and Rachel. Jerry and Rachel. Oh, Rachel's here. Jerry.
Jerry? Who's that?
Sorry. Jerry Stahl.
Oh, yes. Jerry Stahl. Jerry Stahl hasn't arrived either. Okay. Welcome, and thank you very much for coming today, this beautiful day, as we mark the watershed events of Pogrom of November 9th, 10th, 1938. Kristallnacht triggered the full fury of the Holocaust. Would the local survivors and all children and grandchildren of survivors please stand so that we may recognize you? Thank you. You are well represented. John, up front. Third generation. The names that you just heard as we assembled were those of 459 loved ones murdered in the Holocaust. Family members who live in Richmond had these lost ones' names engraved on the Emek Sholem monument that's in front of you. These names are printed inside your program cover, and they are heard continuously at the Virginia Holocaust Museum. Hearing these names assures that they and the millions who perished with them will never be forgotten. Today we also remember the two members of what we refer to as the Emek Sholem family, who were interred here at Emek Sholem Cemetery since last year's memorial service. Paula Wies Wand passed away on December 30th, 2010. Irma Kern Koch passed away on January 3rd, 2011. Both of them and their husbands were among the founders of this cemetery. With the dwindling number of Holocaust survivors, it is their children and grandchildren, the second and third generation, who carry the honor, and the command to remember. They are today's program participants. The second generation recently ordained Rabbi and Cantor Annie Bornstein, Miriam Davidow, Rena Manelis, and Esther Windmiller, second generation participating in the program. And third generation, Rabbi Shafin and our candle lighters. First is Rabbi Shafin, who officially joined Congregation Or Atid in Richmond on August 1. Prior to this, he was rabbi at Temple Beth Or in Brick, New Jersey. He is a graduate of the Jewish Theological Seminary. While a student there, he was group leader for a March of the Living to concentration camps in Poland and then to Israel. His connection to the Holocaust is also very personal. All four of his grandparents were survivors. So he is a third-generation Holocaust survivor. Rabbi Roe Shafin.
Good afternoon. As I was looking at the program and at the themes for this commemoration, I looked at the word zachor, remember. And I also looked at the idea of the memories and the thoughts and the feelings of second and third generation survivors. And an obvious question comes to mind, and that is, how does the second and third generation remember? How does Zachor apply to second and third generation? After all, we ourselves were not there. Our parents and grandparents were. And yet, those of us who are second and third generation know very well that the memory of the Holocaust runs through our veins. Zachor, remember. I remember. I remember sitting on the lap of my Savta Sarah, my grandmother Sarah, and her telling me story after story of how they survived, that they were on a train, a cattle car. And it just so happened that this cattle car broke down in the middle of the track, and they couldn't get it to start again. So they took all of the people off of the cattle cars and called for another one. In the meantime, her father, who she always spoke of as a very wise and smart man, looked around and saw the condition that they had just been in the cattle car, and looked at his family, and he said, "This is not good. We are not going to a good place. When you get a chance, run." And at a certain point, while the guards were not looking, the entire family ran towards the forest and kept on running and running and running. And my grandmother's family ran into Soviet-controlled territory, and there they stayed with friends. And my grandmother remembers, even though she has mixed feelings about the Soviet Union, after all, the Soviets were helping the Arabs while she was in Israel. And there's the whole issue of Stalin. But the Soviets brought in and accepted all of the Jews coming in from Poland and gave them ration cards and shared food with them. And she said she will be forever grateful to the Soviets for that. I remember how she told me that they ran and ran in the snow and in the ice, and at a certain point she couldn't run anymore. She couldn't walk anymore. She fell down in the ice and in the snow, and while walking with her sister, she said, "Leave me. Leave me here, save yourself." And her sister wouldn't listen. Her sister, only a few years older, both of them teenagers, picked up my grandmother and carried her on her shoulders the rest of the way. I remember this grandmother who was so kind and sweet, and my grandfather on one side, on my mother's side, who always spoke of their experiences, running and hiding and running and hiding. And I remember another set of grandparents on the other side, on my father's side, who never spoke about the Holocaust. The memory was just too deep, too painful, too sharp. And yet, I came from not a religious Israeli family, traditional, positive towards religion, but chiloni, secular. And at a certain point, I became more and more observant and started to wear a kippah everywhere I went. And I remember the first time I appeared at my grandparents' home in Israel wearing a kippah. How my grandfather became angry. He too had been religious, very religious, with the beard and the hat and the payas and the tzitzis hanging out. And he says to me, "You wear a yarmulke? How could you wear a yarmulke? How could you believe in the God that could allow such things to happen to me and to your grandmother and to so many other people?" And then he opened up a package with photographs, and he took out a photograph of his sister. Black and white, of course. And he showed it to me. And I could tell the sister with bright brown eyes, with a smile worth $1 million. My daughter actually reminds me of his sister. And he said to me, "How can you believe in a God that would allow my sister to have been taken at such a young and tender age? She was my best friend." I remember that my grandparents told me only to trust my own people. I'm being honest here. I remember how my grandparents from both sides would come to visit us in Los Angeles and would watch TV. And then at the end of every show, during the credits, they would look at the screen and say, "That one is one of ours, and that one is one of ours, and that one is one of ours," pointing out the Silvermans and the Goldsteins and the Cohens and the Levinsons with such pride. I remember how my parents told me that when they came to Israel after the Holocaust, they were told, "Just one more war. One more war, and then it will be over. Then the world will leave us alone." And then came the infamous Gamal Abdel Nasser, who spoke of annihilating the Jewish people and throwing us into the sea, just like Hitler. And came another war, and another, and another, and another, and another. And more dead Jews, and more dead Jews, and more, and more, and more. And still today, the world just won't leave us alone. The little piece of land that we have in the Middle East, barely the size of New Jersey, the world wants us to give it away to a bunch of terrorists. I remember that I am a member of a persecuted minority, and I remembered this when, as a teenager, I rode on my bike on the way back home from the JCC, where I had done the normal things that we all do at the JCC. Went to a class, went swimming. And on the way home as a teenager, I stopped over at the local 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee and to play video games and to get a comic book. But I left the JCC membership directory at the 7-Eleven. And even though I had already ridden on my bike for 20 minutes, I remembered that JCC membership directory. And I turned my bike around and went all the way back to the 7-Eleven to get that directory. Because I was not going to leave a list of Jews anywhere. I remember. I remember how every parting in my family, short trips and long trips, short separations and long ones, are always long and heavy, as if we are always asking one another and ourselves, will I ever see this person again? I remember that even though we are no longer in the Holocaust is in us. The closeness of my family testifies to that. And so, as a third-generation survivor, Ken, Ani Zocher, yes, I remember. I remember. But in Jewish tradition, Zachor is intertwined with another commandment, the commandment of Shamor, of safeguarding and protecting. As second and third generation survivors, as members of the Jewish people, we are now commanded to rebuild the Jewish people, to protect and defend the Jewish state, to build the institutions of Jewish communities around the world, to educate new generation of Jews, proud and confident, who will remember their past, both the good times and the bad, and stand up and out of the ashes of the Holocaust, with their heads held high, shout out to the world, Ani Yehudi, I am a Jew, and I am proud of it. Go ahead, clap. With that, we begin this commemoration where we listen to the wise words, the family stories, and the history that pumps through the veins of second and third generation survivors. Thank you.
My mother used to say, it's almost as though you yourself went through Auschwitz. I'm going to share with you a little bit about what it was like to be an only child born to survivors of Auschwitz. It's not a happy story. There are too many things to even begin to share with you, but a sampling of the kinds of feelings that we children of survivors have, and as many as I speak with, is how many different perspectives I have heard. Being a child born to survivors of Auschwitz is always living with secrets about which you will know nothing. When my father died, my mother said, I was not Daddy's first wife. What a thing to hear. And she brought out photographs of a 5-year-old child named Hetty and her mother. And I began to understand, of course, that that was my father's first wife and child, both of whom were killed in Auschwitz. If only I had known I wouldn't have spent my entire life trying to make my father happy. It means trying to alleviate the constant sadness and pain that you read on their faces, and always knowing that you can't make it go away. It means waiting to hear the stories, but not wanting to hear the stories. Being too afraid to hear the stories. Being an only child of survivors means worrying about your parents all the time for every reason. Worrying about them at work, on the subway steps because they could fall, while they slept, going to visit a friend who lives 2 flights up in the same apartment building, and if they were late, they must be dead. Being a child of survivors of the Holocaust in my situation, and after all, I can only speak to my situation, means feeling guilty about everything from living to succeeding. It means sabotaging yourself repeatedly as you move towards a direction of success. After all, how is it possible for a child of survivors of Auschwitz to sing at the Metropolitan Opera? How can that be? It means denying yourself the joy of happy, healthy relationships. It means wondering what kind of marriage grows out of a DP camp in Germany. It means fiercely and violently defending your parents if someone tries to hurt them, verbally or otherwise. I would have killed. It means trying to understand why your parents are different than everyone else's parents and why they're older. It means trying to comprehend their losses, their degradation, and making excuses for them as to their parenting because of their experiences. It means figuring out why you are invisible. It means finding a way to anesthetize yourself with substances, food, drugs, alcohol, sex, so that you do not continue to imagine in your mind what it was like for them. It means not being able to cope with the thought of the possible death of either one of them. It means separation for any reason, good or bad, is excruciating. I remember my mother saying to me, almost with a smile on her face, my mother and I approached the gates of Auschwitz, and there was Mengele. And you know, he was very good looking. What? He was very good looking? She said, I never saw my mother again. I must have been 4 or 5 when she told me that story originally. I never forgot that story. And I never adjusted to being separated from them, ever, even in death. It means living with all of this even after they're gone. It means loving them so much that you hate them. It means hating that you feel guilty because you hate them. Ultimately, because you love them so much. It means having a heightened sensitivity to all people and everyone's feelings and to all things. But you know, my parents gave me everything practically that I am today. They gave me my Judaism. My father was a chazan in Budapest, and my mother was a gym teacher, actually, in Prague. And it was from my father that I learned the prayers, the liturgy. He was the one who helped me understand, in spite of himself. He gave me what I have today, the rich understanding, the connection, the beauty, the magnificence of being a Jew. They gave me that sensitivity, which I hope I can bring into my work and my life. They gave me far more than I could give them. There's a poem that is in the Mishkan Tefillah prayer book that says, "There are stars up above whose light we only see long after their time with us is gone." Every night, I look at those stars and I see the glowing, loving presence of my mother and father and those of your loved ones who watch over us and are with us and will always be with us. I pray that they are protected under God's care, under Shekhinah, under God's comforting wings, and may it always be so. Thank you for letting me share those feelings with you.
Good afternoon. My name is Irina Manelis, and I am proudly Noam Manelis' daughter. My father, Noam Manelis, was a Holocaust survivor, and his parents, my grandparents' names, are etched into the monument behind me. When I was first asked to speak at this presentation, I was overwhelmed by the opportunity to do so, but I was also hesitant. I was more than humbled to stand before you today. What do I have to say to you? But I knew right away that I would say yes. Yes, because I wanted to tell you about my father, about our family, and to stand here in his memory. During the Holocaust, my dad, Noam, was imprisoned along with his family, including his dad, Baruch Manelis, his mother, Donna Hitron, and his aunt, Tatiana Manelis, in a ghetto in Ukraine. I have been told that over 2,000 Jews were forced into this ghetto, but that only around 60 emerged alive. My dad was only 3 or 4 years old. We don't know exactly how old because his parents died and we don't know the specific birth year. When it was decided that before they could be liberated, the Jews in that ghetto would be mercilessly annihilated, gunned down en masse. This is how my grandparents, Donna Hitron and Baruch Manelis, were murdered. But in the midst of everything, my father's aunt, Tatiana, his brother's sister, had the presence of mind to hide him under her skirt, to pretend to be shot, and to fall down amongst the bodies, toppling to the ground and pretending to be dead. When nighttime came, they crawled out, and my father was so traumatized by everything that had happened that he kept silent, and they were not discovered. They fled on foot, fighting the bitter cold to stay alive, with the only thing to warm them an SS guard's jacket that Tatiana had somehow managed to get a hold of. As they fought to stay alive, they met the approaching Russian army. A cadet came over. He looked at Tatiana, glowering at the jacket, and told her, "You shouldn't be wearing that." And he grabbed it away from her, quickly taking it. Then he looked at them again and handed them his own jacket. Tatiana and my dad made their way to Odessa, Ukraine, where they settled down, and Tatiana adopted my father as her son. His entire life, my dad regarded Tatiana as his mother. And we think that part of the reason he didn't speak much about his parents and his past is that he didn't want to do anything to diminish her as his mother. He was very protective of her. And my sister, Tatiana, is named in her honor. He was also very young when he survived, so I imagine he could not recall much of anything. But on our part, we were scared to ask, scared to dredge up untold horrors, scared to hurt him, so we didn't. We never actually talked about the Holocaust. But he found a way to communicate with us through his actions, and this is not surprising given that his favorite aphorism was the Russian equivalent of actions speak louder than words. We watched him go to shul and celebrate the holy days, take part in the community, and we accompanied him to this Kristallnacht commemoration every year. And every year on Tatiana's birthday, he would take me and my sister and he would tell us a little bit about her and give us small presents to celebrate her life. One year, when we were young teenagers, he gave us 2 gold Star of David necklaces, I'm wearing mine right now, on her birthday. Given his past and his experiences with life in the Soviet Union, he cautioned us, don't wear these necklaces on the outside of your clothing. But defiance came quite easily to us as teenagers, and we wore them outside on our shirts as conspicuously as possible. But our rebellion stemmed from something deeper. It was the strong sense of pride he had implicitly taught us to have in our identity as Jews, and our desire to communicate that to the world. This is the legacy my dad left us. Honestly, 5 years later, the fact that's what's left is his memory, his legacy, it's still hard for me to stomach that this amazing man, this tirelessly hardworking, kind, generous, devoted individual is no longer here with us. He was the kind of person that just by being close to, you could feel the goodness emanate from him. But this is the question that my sister and I must now contend with. How do we pass this legacy down to our own children? How do we help them understand our grandfather, help them understand their identity, help them understand the Shoah? For us, I think our father showed us the way. Once at this Kristallnacht commemoration, many years ago, my dad asked if his adoptive mother's name, Tatiana, could be written on the plaque. But he was told that this memorial was for people who had perished in the Holocaust, not survivors who had passed later on. He understood, and that's how it should be. The names of survivors may not be inscribed in monuments, but we, the second generation, their children, have the blessing and the memory of their lives. It is this very precious legacy that is our keepsake, that is ours to guard and to protect and to pass down to future generations. It is for us to learn as much as we can to add the depth and dimension to those names and to tell our children and our grandchildren about our parents so that they can understand or begin to try to understand the magnitude of the atrocity and the miracle of the survivor generation, so that they know where they came from, and so that they know what they must now do. Thank you.
Many years ago, I spoke to you, the survivors of the Holocaust, my parents of blessed memory, and their generation, that I and my peers were willing to take the lessons of the Holocaust to heart and to remember and to act. We continue to make that commitment and pledge to remember, that we remember, and that our peers and the community does so as well. We all have learned so many lessons as children of survivors. My story is much like the others, and I may fulfill my responsibility differently than some, but like so many of those in the second generation, I believe that we need to make an impression on the world, and we have a responsibility to do so. We each need a vehicle with which to live out our responsibilities. For me, this vehicle has been driven by the legacy of the Holocaust, and its lessons of tolerance, acceptance, and compassion for each other. These lessons were gleaned from experiences which swallowed up my parents and their world. I was born in the shadow of the Holocaust to a father forced to abandon his homeland due to religious persecution, and a mother who survived the Lodz Ghetto, Auschwitz-Birkenau, and Bergen-Belsen concentration camps, losing her mother there to starvation and disease. I am eternally grateful to my parents for their survival, allowing me to be born into freedom. I, like those in the second and the third generation, am the legacy of the Holocaust. And with that, I am uniquely responsible to ensure that we promote understanding and acceptance for all. It was my parents' survival, my responsibility to share their experience, and now to their memory, that I am motivated to strive toward a better existence for all, to be sure that the world is a better place because I was in it. While I've been privileged to have many vehicles to act on my responsibility, working for the Jewish community, staffing Holocaust education events much like this, providing teaching and education for the underserved, mentoring has had the most impact for me, because while I am mentoring, I feel as if I am making a more inclusive world. While mentoring students in Richmond Public Schools over the last 13 years through the Richmond Jewish Coalition for Literacy, I've had the opportunity to be included into another community, not my geographic community, but one that I feel totally a part of. While being welcomed there by the staff and my new community, I have learned lessons from them for a lifetime. At the school every morning, the children recite a daily affirmation, and it includes, "The only time I look down on another person is when I help them up. Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something." What a lesson for them to be able to teach me. As we share that message with the young, we as adults take it to heart. Everybody can do something, and we challenge ourselves on a daily basis to make the world a better place. In her diary written during 2.5 years of hiding, my mother's contemporary, Anne Frank, who perished in Bergen-Belsen around the same time that my grandmother did, wrote, "How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Indeed, the time is now. We all have the opportunity, and all it takes is a single minute to make a difference in the life of others. That is the challenge with which we can live up to, and which I, as an honored member of the second generation, take to heart, and to which I am eternally grateful." Esther Kuttner, our dear friend, grandmother, and mother, told us that her experience was pain eternal. We feel your pain, and we will remember.
So powerful. Thank you all. The name Samuel Sonny Worth is probably unknown to almost everyone here. He was from Norfolk, Virginia, a man on a mission. When his father was dying, he was American-born. He asked Sonny to make a map of the Jewish cemetery in Norfolk, locating all of the graves by name. After doing that, Sonny enjoyed it and liked doing this, and Jewish people whose family members were buried elsewhere in Virginia asked him to help find and map their final resting places. Then followed years of traveling around the state, researching and drawing maps. Finally, he thought he had documented every grave in every Jewish cemetery in Virginia, even remote little Jewish burial grounds in coal mining country. Some years later, he heard about Emek Sholem Holocaust Memorial Cemetery. He contacted me. He asked for records and proceeded to draw his last map. In 2007, when he proudly delivered it I accompanied him to the Virginia Historical Society. It's the map that's on the easel over there that he had to deliver there. And the archivist there took us to the stacks where, in one of several large drawers, that map was added to copies of all of Sunnyworth's maps of the Jewish cemeteries in Virginia. Beside the one that Sonny did, and in his honor, we recently updated the map, which includes developments here in the new section of Emek Shalom. Very sadly, Sonny passed away on September 20th, 2011. He had hoped to be here today. He knew about this. Sonny attended our service here in 2007, and his picture is on the Emek Shalom website when you scroll down to the bottom. We are honored to have his brother, Morris Buddyworth, with us today. Morris, would you stand up, please? Thank you for coming from Norfolk. A huge thanks also to the people who are named in the acknowledgments on your program, but there are two that are not named, and that's Jay Ibsen and Simon Seibelman, who came through too late to be acknowledged on the program with delivery of this very essential podium. Thank you. Now, Tim and Irina Korshin will lead the procession of candlelighters. 6 candles for the 6 million.
Please rise.
תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים את נשמות אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו בגטאות ובמחנות ההשמדה בעבור שלנו נודרים לקיים את זכרם לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ברחמים, ברחמים, יסתירים סתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. Adonai, 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 נחלתם, וינוח בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר Amen.
Before you may sit down. Before the concluding Kaddish, I take the blame for leaving this out. It was not in your program. We do have a winner of the Never Again Award this year. Esther Windmiller, would you introduce her, please?
I would love to. Hi, everybody. As a child of a survivor, when I am asked, what does it mean to be in that role? What does it mean to remember? What it means to me is I try to put myself in the place of all the players. What would it have been like if I'd have been in a camp? Would I have had the strength to run or to hide someone under my skirt? If I had been safe here in the United States, how far would I have gone to save my brothers and sisters? What would I have done? If I was in the woods in France with a gun, would I have been a good fighter? What would I have done? And for me, that's the legacy, because that doesn't end in thinking about what happened then. That happens right now. What are we going to do now? Because somewhere there are thousands, if not millions of people right now who are wondering where that help is. Can't someone see what is happening to me? How can this be allowed to happen? And it is our legacy to do something about it, not just to talk, not just to feel, but to do something about it. And that's where the Never Again Award came from, is that idea that remembering is not complete without doing something. And so this year it is my pleasure to introduce to you our award winner, who is Gracie DeSantis. Come on up, Gracie, of Clover Hill High School. Now let me tell you a little something about the award this year and about Gracie. We've changed the award. In the past, as many of you know, we had students write an essay and they would present their essay to you. But this year, we wanted to do more. And this was the idea of Rena Berlin, so she gets the credit for this. And that is, we wanted students to put together a project. We wanted them to do something, not just talk. And so they submitted their projects, and Gracie was the winner. And Gracie wrote an amazingly involved essay about children in Uganda. And not only did she write an essay, but she started a group at her high school called Help on the Hill. She goes to Clover Hill High School. And she put together a movie called What's Worth Remembering with the help of the Invisible Children charity. And she also started collecting money with the Change for a Change charity to try to support helping in Uganda. This club that she has put together is making posters to put around the school to educate the school population. She is putting together a raffle to raise money. She is going to put together an exhibit to be in her school museum and a charity booth at a school function. And she's planning to make those connections with other clubs to keep this going. So hopefully her contribution isn't just something that happens today, but will continue to happen in the future and that other students can take part in. She's a junior. She wants to go to William and Mary High School. She wants to major in literature or creative writing. She reads and writes a lot because she wants to be a novelist. When she's not reading and writing, she is playing the violin, she's playing softball, or riding horses. And she's not going to present her paper to you today. If you want to see the movie, you can see it. Just punch in Help on the Hill. It's in Facebook and it's on YouTube. And you can see the movie. You could be friends with them on Facebook if you wanted to. And you can start to do something. But for now, by way of introduction, I'm going to ask Gracie to answer for you why it is she decided to get involved in this project.
We are gathered here today to remember the atrocities that happened in the Jewish Holocaust of the 1930s and 40s. But this has happened not only for the Jewish Holocaust, but has continued throughout the world and different times. For the Armenian genocide, Nanking, Uganda, Rwanda, it happens all over the world every day. And it will continue to happen until it is stopped and prevented. I feel that I am very lucky with what I have in my life, and I feel that it is important to give back to the world. Help on the Hill was established to aid the world and help spread awareness so that everybody who feels that they need to give something back and those who are unaware of what is happening can learn and act on their feelings.
Thank you. And thank you.
If you are a survivor of the Holocaust, a survivor of the Shoah, please rise. If you are a child of a survivor or survivors, please rise. If you are a grandchild of a survivor or survivors, please rise. If you have had a relative of any relation that perished during the Shoah, please rise. If you know someone or had a friend who perished during the Holocaust, during the Shoah, please rise. Everyone else, please rise. Those of us who had relatives perish, we say Kaddish for them. Those of us who had friends who perished, we say Kaddish for them. Those of us who had relatives or friends who survived, but who are no longer alive, we understand how much of their life was taken away during the Holocaust. And if they are no longer alive, we say Kaddish for them. And all the rest of us know how many people there are who perished in gas chambers, in mass executions, in pits, in ovens. And they have no one to say Kaddish for them, so we will say Kaddish for them. Yitgadal, Auschwitz. V'yitkadash, Lodz. Shemei Rabbah, Ponar. Be'alma divra chirutei, Babiyar. V'yamlich malchutei, Maidanek. Bechayeichon uveyomeichon, Birkenau. ובחיי דכל בית ישראל קובנה. בעגלה ובזמן קריב ינוסקה. ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח תרז'נשטט. ויתפאר ויתרומם Buchenwald. Vitnase vitadar Treblinka. Vitale vithalal Vilna. Shmei de Kudesha Bergen-Belsen. Berichu Le'ela Mauthausen. Min kol birchata v'shirata Dachau. Tushbechata v'nechemata Minsk. Damiran be'alma, Warsaw, Varsha. Ve'yimru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya ve'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'yimru, Amen. Ose shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'yimru, Amen. As a final gesture of remembering, of Zachor, I've been asked by Inga to announce that we are all invited to go and approach the memorial to those who perished and to light the candles that are there and to think about them and to honor them and to look with memory and with pain at the glowing candle that we shall light.
Jacob. This by God.